lead here at Cloud App. Oh, welcome everyone. I am excited to welcome you to the 4 Secrets to Building and Managing Successful Remote Teams webinar today. I am Joe Martin, the marketing lead here at Cloud App. I'm excited to have Gaetano Nardi from Nextiva with me and John Knightley of BlueJeans Network. And John and BlueJeans are actually hosting this webinar for us as well, so thank them for that. I wanted to take you through kind of a quick agenda, and then we'll get into kind of the meat of the content. But initially, we'll do some quick intros, introduce some of our backgrounds, hopefully share some of the insight of why John and Gaetano and myself have some credibility to talk about remote work. We'll go through the meat of the tips and tricks on remote work and management, and then lastly, we'll review some takeaways. This webinar is being recorded, so feel free to take notes if you would like, but the recording will be sent out to you later, as well as the deck. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and we will be doing a Q&A at the end. So, and first off, I want to introduce, let's start with John. So John is the CMO of BlueJeans Network, former Adobe alum. Him and I overlapped over there and have stayed in touch since I moved over to Cloud App. John, do you want to take kind of do a quick intro on yourself and kind of what you're doing at BlueJeans and what you've done with some remote work?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks for hosting us and having us today, Joe, and thanks for attending, everybody. I'm John. I lead marketing here at BlueJeans. If you're not familiar with us, we're a cloud video conferencing company. We're actually on our webinar events platform today, but we also just do host meetings on our platform. And I'm used to working with remote teams. The last several jobs have all been where most of us are working in different places, and so this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. How do you make everyone successful and equip them with the right tools, and also build a culture of excellence, but also, how do you have some fun along the way when you have a remote team? So looking forward to the chat today.
Love it. BlueJeans was a core piece of Adobe when I was over there. Definitely a great way to connect with remote workers and have video conferencing being kind of first and foremost. So thanks for joining, John. Gaetano, would love to have you kind of do a quick background of yourself, what you're doing at Nextiva, and how you're actually working remotely as well, and some other things you want to introduce.
Sure thing. First of all, Joe and John, thank you guys both for inviting me to be a part of this. I guess I'm a lot younger in my marketing career, so it's good to be with 2 veterans. You guys probably show me a thing or two about this remote work life. But the last time I was in an office working permanently in an office was 2016. So I've been remote now, completely remote for 4 years. I would never go back to office life, that's for sure. I'm actually working from my bedroom right now, like I do every day. And it's an interesting setup that we have in Nextiva. My team, the demand generation team, we're a team of 8 marketers. We're a hybrid, so some are in our office in Arizona, and the rest of us are remote. So it's interesting, the manager of the team being remote and some being in the office, others being distributed throughout the world. And I'll break down how all that works. The last time I was in office was at Pipedrive. I used to run the SEO team there in New York. And the reason why I wear my New York hat, even though I'm in Florida now, is because I remember those days of commuting from Yankee Stadium in the Bronx all the way down to downtown Manhattan, an hour and a half on the subway, brutal, hour and a half on the subway each day, 3 hours a day of commuting. And then when I became the VP of marketing at Sales Hacker and I was remote, and I didn't have to do that anymore, I was like, whoa, wait a second. This isn't fair. I didn't know this was available the whole time, and now it is. And it was a game changer for me. And, we'll be breaking down how all this stuff works and how to manage remote teams with Joe and John today. So thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Gaetano. And then just quickly on myself, I joined Cloud App about a year ago, and when I was at Adobe at the kind of the tail end, I was helping manage some people in India and Singapore and different offices. And if you've ever managed APAC area specifically, it's really challenging with time zones. So no one was really happy on the India calls because they're exactly 12 hours ahead of me. So I actually started using Cloud App as a kind of more asynchronous connection point with those people, and I loved it so much that I joined the company. And we're, trying to enable remote workers, just like these other two great brands that Gaetano and John help run. And quickly on kind of the format here, we've got kind of the 4 areas we'll go into, and what I'll do is probably alternate. So I'll start off with asking John what he thinks about kind of the questions. We'll dive in, and then I'll ask Gaetano, and then we'll switch for the next question. And we'll kind of just see where this leads us. But each question is at the top here, and then I also filled in some insights that we'll animate into. These may not be exactly what we talk about, but they'll be, provide some takeaways that everyone can have. So, John, let's start off with you. What have you been able to find as the balance of creating professional, personal relationships? It can be challenging leading or managing a remote team or being part of a remote team and filling that in-office connection. How have you been able to find ways around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, our tendency when we're running fast is to schedule, meetings or send emails or whatever about specific work topics. And when you're remote, sometimes you feel like, hey, that's great, but I'm missing the chatter, the water cooler chatter that I don't get because I'm not in the office with people and just building those personal relationships. So, one of the things that I've done this in several jobs, tried to do is kind of recreate that water cooler effect a little bit. And we have like a monthly meeting we call a straight talk, where there's no PowerPoints allowed, and it's really not meant to be a business oriented meeting. It's meant to be more a fun meeting. So whether it's what animal represents you best, or what are your holiday plans, or that kind of thing. We've found that that's been a good way and a great way to just get people talking. So maybe there's something on their mind about the company or the personal development, and it's an easier atmosphere for people to, ask those questions and then get to know people beyond just the work image.
That's great. Yeah, I think a regular cadence of having those types of conversations is valuable. Do you also try and I'm sure you have in-person connection points as well, like annual offsite or team offsites, or what's kind of something you might do there?
Yeah, at this current job, we're lucky that our employees are, more like within an hour if they're remote, or 2 on a flight, like Colorado to California, or those kind of connections. So we would do almost even once a month if we can.
Cool.
But in past lives where we were international and everything like that, it might be once or twice a year, but it really helps to get everyone together and go through stuff, and then go out to dinner and have some fun outside, go to a ball game or something like that as well. So if you can,
Yeah.
I mean, there's costs there, but.
Yeah, it's amazing how that in-person connection point can be valuable to breaking some barriers. I know over at Adobe there was, a much larger team, obviously, and sometimes I found that I would be able to get what I needed from other teams quicker if they knew me, if I was able to meet with them and in person, and definitely here at Cloud App, half our company's remote, and so we try and do that yearly offsite and connect, meet everyone in person. Gaetano, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's not easy to do this. The way that I kind of get around it with my team is, well, first of all, we have meetups, in-person meetups, once a quarter. So that definitely helps. But sometimes, like, I have employees who do feel isolated. And what I tell them is, you know what? Let's just like digitally work and hang out at the same time. So as weird as that sounds, like we'll be on like a screen share or something, and we may not even be saying anything to each other. We're just like typing and working. I'll be like, hey, what are you working on?
Yeah, nice.
Then whoever it is might just be like, oh, did you see that latest algorithm change? Like, yeah, oh man, like I saw that shit. Damn, like, oh, by the way, did you notice that our ranking increased for this? And then like we'll just start talking about random stuff. And all right, cool, I got to do something real quick. All right, but like we'll just leave it on for 2 hours and like digitally hang out and work to kind of strengthen that odd but satisfying connection when you're working remotely with someone and you can't see them, they just feel isolated. That's kind of one thing I do at my team that works whenever that comes about. So that's one thing to try.
That's a really good idea. I like how it really kind of simulates real office work. Like if you're working next to someone, it really is like you're kind of crushing it, for like 40 minutes, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I remembered I needed to talk to you about something, and it's just like those informal conversations.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's kind of like digital drive-by, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Everyone knows those office drive-by moments. You're walking by someone's desk. Oh, I had to talk to you about something. Hey, Joe. Hey, whoever, right? And then, this is just kind of the equivalent way of doing it digitally. So that's how we do it.
Definitely. Hey, and Gaetano and John, if you guys want to jump in on each other's points, feel free. I'll just try and moderate if needed.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I was going to say the other thing is the asynchronous you mentioned too, which is, hey, I want to, we're onboarding some new employees. I want to quickly have them understand better how to use our tools, not BlueJeans necessarily, but other tools that we use.
Sure.
That for Cloud App is great, right? So here's a 90-second, how do we use, you mentioned Asana, I think in one of your slides, we use Reich here, but how do you use that tool to, log a new work item that we're going to be working on or whatever, and just a quick, shoot it out to someone works a lot better than an email with a link to who knows where, right? A portal someplace. We also use Workplace by Facebook for things like, hey, birthdays and new employees and all those kind of things. A place to kind of have another virtual water cooler that's asynchronous.
Yeah, it's important to kind of have those little things in place, and it's part of like the growing pains of a new company, and like a growth company like BlueJeans, kind of like figuring out, hey, we should do this type of thing. One thing we've tried to do here is like connection points that people may talk about informally. So like we'll do like sports connection points, and not everybody's into sports, but like we have some remote workers in Mexico and some in Europe, and they know nothing about college basketball, but they filled out March Madness brackets because we did a like Amazon gift card to the winner. So it kind of gets everyone connecting, and it creates a nice informal connection point. You can do like Oscar predictions or have like a Slack book club. Those are some of the things we've tried to do here.
That's cool. I like the book club one. We have a random channel, so like that one actually does get a lot of stuff. The rule is basically just drop random crap in there that's interesting, and it sparks all sorts of like non-work related discussion. And sometimes it's good to have that humor, like even in an Asana thread where we're working on a task. Like if someone does something cool, I'll make like a joke or something. I'll leave like a bomb emoji, like, oh, that's so bomb. Like it just kind of lightens things up rather than just like, okay, great, task completed, awesome, move on to next task, like robot.
Yeah, you've got to add some flair in, definitely, and that personality helps because it is like goals are never ending, right? By design, like you hit your quarterly revenue goal, and here's another one, like grow it by 10% or whatever. So it's like you need to have some of that along the way, joking and fun. my team actually, I saw one of my guys on my team posted this on LinkedIn today, but we have like a no joking Tuesday. They were just getting along too well and it started being like, are you serious or are you joking about something? So it's like Tuesday is like the no joke day. So like no sarcasm. But that's kind of like just shows a team culture, company culture type of thing that we try and promote having fun and connecting.
I like that.
Before we move on to kind of the next point, any closing thoughts from you guys?
I mean, I would just say work kind of is personal now. So don't be afraid to get like involved in the personal lives of your team members. Like it doesn't have to be too personal, but like for example, one of my employees just texted me and said that their grandfather is sick and may not, be alive much longer. I said, well, just go home, go be with your family, just go. And like,
Yeah.
That's just reality now. When people say work is work, personal is personal, I feel good about my team members being open with me to be able to say stuff like that, even though it's heavy, rather than just making up some wild, wacky story like, oh, something happened with my pet duck or something like that, right? Like,
Yeah.
And when you do that, there's more trust, there's more openness, and it's just easier. You don't have to beat around the bush about stuff. You can just go take care of what you got to take care of and move on. So that's the final point for me.
Actually, Gaetano, I think that's a really good point. Trust is a huge piece of making this remote work. I remember one story I'll share was at a prior company. I won't name which one, but it had a sort of in the office policy. And so I would spend 2 hours commuting every day, and not a single one of my team members was in that office. They were all over the country, all over the world. And so that feeling of I can't be trusted to like get the job done and leave my team, I have to show up is painful. And if you guys have a chance, Gallup, the polling company just published research 2 weeks ago on remote work. And they had a great stat, which was the most engaged employees were employees who worked 3 to 4 days remote. So it's an interesting thought. So a lot of it's about establishing trust with your peers that if they're counting on you to get something done, you're going to get it done. Same with your manager or whoever, right? And then if you're the manager, how do you show that you trust your employees and aren't going to be nitpicking about where they are, when they are, as long as they're getting their job done and doing a great job.
Yeah, that's actually, that segues pretty nicely to the next question. So I think we can stop there. Just a couple of things that I had filled in. Again, these don't really necessarily tie with what we talked about, but discovering, putting the time in, learning how to work with each other's different styles. Definitely we touched on frequent communication, celebrating those successes, trying to find ways to meet up and connect. So looking for topics you can connect on informally. And expounding on what John said, we'll start with Gaetano on this question, but the importance of setting expectations for hours, availability, and communication. I think a big piece of this is trust. It's understanding when people are going to be available and also understanding that we all need breaks. We're not robots. We do need times when we can unplug each day and not be expected to be on. So let's start with you, Gaetano. What are your kind of initial thoughts on this question?
Yeah, this is a big one. So I think every culture kind of creates their own version of this. Probably is not one blanket rule that will work for every company. But I will tell you that with our team, we don't have many rules around this at all. Actually, it's just get your shit done. Full trust to everybody. If there's a huge window throughout the day where you're not responsive, we'll just assume you're in meetings, or we'll just assume that your head's down doing some deep work. That's fine too. I'm a huge believer in deep work. And I don't want to create the kind of culture where everyone has to time block so that if I look at their calendar, I say, oh, Joe's working on AdWords for the next 2 hours, or Sally is working on content creation for the next 2 hours. I don't believe any of that is necessary, at least for our team. It's kind of just full trust. Work around the clock if you want. I have a weird myself. I'm a night owl, so I have a very weird workflow, and everyone knows that. And I tell them, look, guys, I'm the kind of person who's going to be in Asana at 2 a.m. Leaving comments and cleaning things up. But that doesn't mean I expect you to be responsive. That's just what works for me. They know that. We have people in India, so they may be working at odd hours. We have people in Ukraine. We have people in California. We have people in Arizona. We have people in New York. So, it's kind of just what works for the business. The biggest thing that we do kind of keep with like a time-bound stuff is like our AdWords schedule, because there are peaks throughout the day where traffic is high and bids are high, where we do need somebody on that monitoring it during the times that are really high volume for us. But outside of that, when it comes to responsiveness and all that sort of stuff, hours of availability, communication, we're very open about it, very flexible. Just, full trust, get your shit done. Don't be a ghost for like a week, and, things will be fine. So that's kind of how we run it.
Cool. Let's go a little bit deeper before we go over to John. What is kind of a way that you try and manage that? Get your stuff done. Is it obviously you can see at the end of the quarter with goals and kind of matching those things, but is it kind of like a weekly OKR thing that people need to fill out, or what's kind of the process for management?
Yeah, so we're Scrum Weekly, so we have weekly sprints. We operate in the same way that a development team would operate, and we have a huge kind of wave of different things that we need to accomplish on a weekly basis. So there's brand, there's SEO, there's lead generation, there's advertising. We have to work really closely with creative. So development, there's a lot of collaboration that has to happen between many different departments and marketing, product as well. So weekly sprints is the way that we cadence everything. We have a sprint planning session on Mondays and a sprint conclusion session on Fridays. And then that obviously has to align to our OKRs, our monthly goals. And then we have daily marketing at our team has a daily quota and a monthly quota. So we keep track of where we're at on our commitment to sales, and if we're falling behind, that's when we call audibles and see how we can make it up. But we do have responsibilities there, and Monday commit day, Friday review day, and if you're not going to be able to make what you commit to by Friday, you need to speak up by Wednesday. That's pretty much how we run it. Yep.
I like it. And I realize we threw out some vernacular. For everyone that doesn't know, OKR is outcome and key result. It's kind of like a key performance indicator or goal completion task. John, what's your thoughts on importance of setting expectations and knowing rules of engagement for communication?
Sure. I mean, we also have scrums and sprints for certain of our projects, not all of them, and like weekly sync meetings. One of the teams that I inherited, because I recently moved into this role, had a weekly KPI meeting that I want to continue, which is great, which is sort of everyone's got visibility into everyone else's KPIs, and each person comes in and does a quick stand-up on, here's the week's dashboard, and then one or two people will drill in a little deeper to get input from the rest of the team on what's working or not in their area, whether it's SEO or our email nurtures or whatever else they're working on, right? So I think that's an interesting one that is new to me because it was a different team managing that. And then I think the other piece is finding time to get together and have unstructured sort of more planning type of sessions. So we have a few of those on a weekly cadence, and then one-on-ones to just make sure that, and skip levels as well, to make sure that people have a chance to bring up things that they might not be comfortable talking about in a broader meeting context. So those
Yeah.
are some of the things that we do to just have some communication. And then if there's no need for a specific meeting, we'll cancel it.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's actually ending on an important point is don't just meet to meet. I I fell in love with like the 15 and 45-minute meetings when I came over here or when I was leaving Adobe was the 15-minute stand-ups, and then reducing that 60-minute meeting into a 45 one and just trying to make it really tight. What are your thoughts? And we'll start with John on kind of like rules engagement with communication mediums. So we have Slack, email, phone call, or text. Do you kind of have expectations of like, okay, if someone slacks me, it's maybe a little bit more urgent than an email. Email's longer form. If I'm getting a phone call, like something's definitely on fire that I need to fix. How do you kind of manage those different mediums? And then we'll go to Gaetano after John.
Yeah, certainly I wouldn't say it's formal, but yes, if it's text by phone or if it's a Slack, uh, more likely that someone needs something sooner than an email. Um, but we don't have any sort of formal mechanism. I will say that it feels like, on the one hand, like everyone wants to have fewer emails, and so using other forms to communicate. On the other hand, it feels like there's more places to check for
Yeah. Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
Right? So it's a little bit of a balancing act, but you kind of get into a work pattern that, okay, if it's on Workplace by Facebook, I can get to it whenever because that's typically more information based. If it's on Slack, better take a look at that. Email, I can have certain periods in the day when I check, that kind of thing. But then you'll have a person who doesn't use Slack, like your CEO, and maybe they use just email, and so you're like, still better check, to know when that might be coming in.
Awesome. What do you think, Gaetano?
Yeah, I mean, John made a good point. Not everybody is going to use Slack. Like we are trying to seriously move all communication to Asana, and we're doing pretty good at that. Asana is a company that claims their email list totally, which I don't think is realistic for everyone, but we really are doing our best to keep everything in Asana. We did kind of have a problem at one point of some people using Slack, some people using email, some people using this, but we kind of all rallied around this idea that like let's keep at least all task related discussion in Asana, please. And then, for big ticket things, maybe huge updates or stuff like that, you can use email. And then like for quick little things, it can be Slack or whatever your choice of DM is. But that's kind of how we're looking at it right now.
Cool. It's
Joe,
interesting to hear. Yeah, go ahead, John.
I was going to turn the tables on you because you're doing a nice job moderating, but you said, when you were at Adobe, you had certain work styles, and now you're at Cloud App. Tell me a little bit more about how you guys use Cloud App for communications. We use you guys in certain areas, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you use it for sort of work, in addition to some of the other marketing-oriented ways you can use Cloud App.
Yeah, so for us, we definitely have we're more of a Slack culture here. We do use Asana and love the project management there. Could definitely use it a little bit more like how Gaetano's using it. As far as Cloud App goes, you probably wouldn't find more active people than us. Dog fooding is great, and we find a lot of things that could be better each day we use it. Primarily, I'm using it to save myself breath, and having to write things out and make them contextually relevant. So I do a lot of work with our designers on our website and landing pages and setting up webinars like this. And so instead of having to type out a massively long email, I can just take some screenshots of maybe some other people that have done some things that I've liked, or record myself talking to my screen in the designer case and say, hey, I want this web page to look like this. I'd love some icons here, here, and here, pointing with my mouse, and then adding some annotated screenshots. as context. And then communicating with my team if there's like, typos or errors or things that need to be fixed. It's really nice to just annotate on the screenshot rather than saying in that top header next to the hero image, this needs to be changed. It's nice to just be able to do it visually. So we're using Cloud App, obviously a lot over here, a lot of different use cases. And then I try and have it's not formal like what you said, John, but I definitely, if I'm getting a text or phone call, that's I need to respond immediately. And Slack is kind of more urgent, but I also need to snooze it a lot. To your point too, John, of we're getting notifications in so many places. Gaetano, I would love to see the Asana bombs that your team gets in email in the morning. I'd probably have to snooze those if I was on your team and I woke up to 10 Asana notifications if you were taking notes at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, everyone laughs. They're like, "Oh, who got hit by the 3 a.m. Asana G bus last night?"
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about Asana is that you can just not have it on notification mode. You could just not have notifications at all, or you can snooze, whatever. And it's not as invasive as email. Some people have the actual email sound going off when an email comes through. So you don't have that with Asana unless you have email notifications on. But anyway, that was a cool example you shared of Cloud App, how, if you take a screenshot of something that needs a revision, for example, you can annotate right on the screen instead of having to write text below that separately. Yeah, change, to your design team, for example, change this headline to this thing or change this to that. It's just easier to do it in the annotation. So very cool.
Yeah, save some time for sure. I think we touched on a lot of these, but definitely regular connection points. You both mentioned those, which is great. Having regular one-on-ones and skip levels and having the Scrum where needed. And, it's just a lot of touch points. And I also like that you both mentioned that both teams are heavily involved. So it's there's a lot of collaboration, which I also think is kind of a modern day workforce thing. Lots of cross-team collaboration. Time zone considerations, and then terms of engagement. I mentioned a couple here. Any parting words before we move on to the third question tip?
Now let's keep doing it. We got questions coming in on the sidebar too. We'll want to get to.
Cool, awesome. Okay, so we have dropped a lot of different tools that we're using for management and communication. Let's start with Gaetano. Outside of Asana, which you've obviously shown a lot of love for, what are some things that you're using to help manage yourself working remote and also a team that you're managing that's?
Yeah, so obviously we use Nextiva. It's a business phone service and cloud communication app. And the thing that I love about it is I don't have to have my phone at my desk. I don't even need a desk phone, period. I don't need my cell phone near me. I can move that away and avoid distractions. Any calls that I have to make can be done through the soft phone app in my MacBook, whether internal or external. There's chat in that as well. So we do chat with each other through the Nextiva app DM. And the other thing that's cool about it is you can make international calls, and there's a mobile app as well. So if you don't feel like giving out your personal phone number or something like that, you can just run everything through the Nextiva app. It's good for focus. So that's one thing that I'm a big fan of. We use Asana as I mentioned. That's pretty much we wouldn't be able to run the business without it. We're a Google Sheets and Google Doc shop as well. And some of the other ones that we like to use for note sharing is Evernote. So that's some of the key ones that I like using every day. There are many others, but those are probably the most important ones.
Cool. Yeah, it's nice to have an app like Nextiva for phone related things. I know like when I first started here at Cloud App and I was doing my first press release for the company and I like didn't have a number set up and I was like, oh, I don't really want to put my cell phone number on a press release. So I had to find something else that I could put there. So that's definitely a valuable tool. I like G Suite as well that you mentioned, and lots of great tools you brought up there. John, what are you using at BlueJeans? Obviously, other than BlueJeans itself, to help connect your team and communicate.
Sure, we talked about a few of them. Slack being a major one for our asynchronous chat. We mentioned Cloud App. Where it sounds like you guys are using Asana. We use Rike in the marketing team as our kind of work management tool. In dev, they use like some of the Atlassian tools like Jira and stuff like that. And then we also use, I mentioned Workplace, and then Airtable for content collaboration. Basically, all of our content projects are in Airtable, which is really easy to use and user-friendly for giving visibility across teams, what we're working on from a content perspective and how to find the content. We have Office 365 as well. We were a Google shop. We moved to Office 365 a while ago, kind of to reflect the customers we serve. We needed to be familiar with that environment. So we actually have Teams and Slack, but we tend to use Slack more internally. Some groups use Teams as well, just to keep things interesting. But I think those are the main ones from a collab perspective.
Cool. Yeah, those are some great tools, really effective ways to connect with each other and keep each other going. Let's start with John. What have you found is kind of like, what is the best way, and I don't know exactly how to ask this, but what's the best way to connect your tool stack so that it is being used effectively? So like, I know at Adobe, it felt like we fumbled a little bit through a bunch of different things until we kind of settled on Slack, and that kind of stuck. But it was like Yammer and Jabber, and then our own tool, and then we brought on kind of like BlueJeans and Slack, and that was kind of like that was what we ran with, and that was what helped people be effective and collaborate. What have you found has been a way to promote people being on the same tools and getting the most out of your stack?
Yeah, well, first of all, if the information is only in that tool and you need that information, you're going to be incentivized to go use it, right? So if Rike has the project plans, that's where you're going to have to go. But some of it's about integration. So like with BlueJeans, we've integrated with Slack. So if you use the integration, it's one click and you're into your video conference, right from Slack, or the same with Outlook or Google Calendar and that kind of thing. So certainly with the use of our tool, we built a lot of those integrations to the other workplace tools. And I guess that's our mantra, certainly, is the digital workplace has to connect, and the cloud is a great place for those tools to connect to make those workflows more seamless. And it's not like every tool needs to integrate with every other tool. Some don't because it's a different workflow. But where it makes sense, certainly we try to use those integrations to make it more seamless. Same with Workplace. We can stream BlueJeans meetings or events directly into Workplace or Facebook Live if we want a broader audience to be able to see those.
Awesome. Gaetano, what about you? How do you kind of make sure that people are, you're investing in certain tech stacks. How do you make sure that people are getting on those and using them most effectively?
Yeah, so it's not easy to do, but one challenge, for example, is like having everyone use. So we're a Salesforce Pardot shop, and this is kind of where like marketing operations has to help out with demand gen, but using Salesforce reports and data as kind of the single source of truth. Unfortunately, Google is grossly inaccurate when it comes to so many things. When it comes to conversion data and like conversion data from AdWords, for example, like you'll look at an ad campaign And in AdWords itself, you'll see like 10 conversions, and then you look in Salesforce and it's 40. And it's like, whoa, how did it underreport by that much?
Yeah.
And like someone from my team will send me a message saying, wow, like this ad campaign is performing really badly. Our cost per acquisition is this, and we're only getting so many leads and stuff. And I'm like, well, the clicks and impressions are really high. So it seems that Google is accurately reporting that. But then when you look at on the back end, it's not there. So, it's just a reminder. I'm like, look, then I show this particular team member, look, if you go in this report in Salesforce, remember we have a list of all the dashboard links. So this is where you need to go to look at, accuracy around reporting. And this way you don't raise any red flags. So that's just one example. And it's a thing that comes with time. People will eventually understand where to go look for what and how to, get comfortable with each tool. If they're not like, another thing too is like if they're not familiar with how to use a certain tool the best way, we have Wednesday learning workshops. So
cool.
we'll deep dive into something really deep, one specific thing. It might be how to use Ahrefs to do keyword research better. It may be looking at Hotjar heat map data on a particular page. Maybe it's a pricing page deep dive. What are we seeing? Where are the clicks going? Where is the mouse moving around a lot? Where could visitors be hung up or stuck in a certain part of the conversion funnel? All these sorts of things. And that inherently gets the team kind of more comfortable. They see how I share my screen and I move around, and they see what I do. And then, we kind of pass the mic around the room type thing. So just that, that collaboration, even though it's through cloud, it does help. And eventually people get more confident, they get better, they know what to do, and things just, start to move like a more oiled machine, if you will.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like, a good combination of between you and John is having obviously a little bit of forcing people of like, hey, the stuff is there, so you got to like learn how to use it, and let's do some, and then Gaetano, let's do some trainings and teach people how to enable them to use it. And then kind of, top down being an example. And if you're in there and using all the tools and communicating, then that's going to, lead to.
Exactly.
I added kind of a remote work stack sample here. Obviously, there's millions of tools you can use. But here's, a couple we've mentioned, but lots of tools. I think it's a combination of finding out what works for you and finding out what works for your base and kind of who you're supporting, and then, making sure they're enabled to find success with those things. We're gonna move on to the last question, so we can have some time for Q&A. But how do you motivate a remote team? We'll start with Gaetano, I think. How do you motivate a remote team? How do you motivate yourself as you're remote currently and have been for a while to get up every morning and get ready to conquer the day and keep growing on each goal?
Yeah. Oh man, this is a good one. So for me, I'll tell you guys, I'm down here in beautiful Miami, Florida. So that for me is enough. I get to wake up, look out my window, see sunshine and palm trees. I'm motivated. I'm like, damn, I can't lose this. I can't mess this up. I got to keep performing well so I could stay in Miami and that I can be here and be in a place that I love. And it's the same for a lot of my team. We have a guy that loves just being in Europe, and he just loves bouncing around. At first, he was kind of just kind of quarantined, and he's from the Ukraine, but he said his goal is to like be able to travel around and stuff. And like I told him, do it, man. Just like do whatever you want to do. If you want to be a digital nomad, go for it. That motivates him. Another person on my team gets very motivated when I have one-on-ones with her and do deep dives into certain things. So this person is motivated by knowledge. Another person that I have on my team is motivated by money. So I set, goals for that person to say, look, if we can get this KPI hit by this time, we'll hook up a bonus for you, and maybe I'll throw in something else, right? So you kind of just another person is motivated when I come to town and take them out and go boozing and dinners and stuff. They like that in-person kind of going out, camaraderie. So I think what it comes down to is you got to know what motivates each individual person, and then kind of enable that motivation within them by, dangling, if you want to call it that, the things that they like kind of in front of them in a way, and playing to those cards. So that's kind of how I do it. I don't know if there's a perfect science behind it. I know maybe John and you, Joe, have some good tips, but that's the way that I kind of go about it.
Yeah, before we get over to John, I think it's a piece of, you hit it on the head, is not just how other people are motivated, but when you're managing, how do you motivate yourself to motivate others? Like you got to find ways that work not just for your own team, but work for you to motivate them. So kind of like find that balance, that middle ground of like what helps you as a motivator to motivate others, and what helps them when they're wanting to be motivated. John, what are some things that you've found have been helpful when you're managing or a remote team or working remotely?
Yeah, well, I think Gaetano said it well, which is everyone has different motivations and things that get them excited, get them, stoked to come to work, etc. I do think the remote, like figuring out what that balance means for different people is important. So we have a couple people who are intense skiers in our group, and we've worked it out so they can live in the mountains. They don't have to be here in California. One's in Colorado, one's in the Sierras, and that's motivating for them, that they can do their job and then be close to skiing without having to fight the crowds and that. Another person really wanted an international experience. We have some offices overseas. We were able to work out for her to go live abroad and do her demand gen role over in London. So that's a couple examples. The other thing is really figuring out what's next in your career, and what do you need to build from a skill set perspective, from an experience perspective, to feel like, hey, there's a reason I'm sticking around in this job, not just for my paycheck, but I'm going to learn something valuable that I can use as a springboard to my next role or my next promotion or those kind of things. So really, zeroing in on that, and then finding ways to carve out projects for people where they can sort of take ownership and run and learn a new skill or have a new thing to add to their resume. Because at the end of the day, another thing in that Gallup poll, 51% of employees are looking today. Whether or not they're going to stay or not, is there something better out there? And so you kind of have to say, there's a fight for talent. We need to not assume that people are going to stick around. We need to find ways to make it better for them.
Yeah, the job market's good. I think it's important. Both things you guys mentioned is really just, honestly, just putting a priority on it, right? It's finding that you need to, your employees are one of your biggest assets, and without a good team, you can't accomplish nearly as much. And so finding ways to motivate them is so crucial. And I liked and have kept it here at Cloud App, is one thing that Adobe did was called the check-in process, where they kind of got rid of annual performance reviews and broke it into quarterly performance kind of conversations. And so I encourage my team to have quarterly chats with me where it's not tactical. It's like, how's your career? How are you feeling about Cloud App? What can I do better as a manager? Try and support a really candid conversation. And those are also conversations to talk about salary and benefits. And so it's like, we're both prepared of hey, it's a quarterly check-in. Here's probably what we're going to talk about. So I, as a manager, know what's coming up. An employee can kind of know what they can talk about in that situation. And it provides a way that we can motivate people. And then at a small company, it's like there's so many things that need to be done that it's like that can be motivating to some people. Is like, hey, I'm working on automation, but I really like paid search. can I, spend 10% of my time kind of learning paid search and, making those opportunities available to people.
Totally.
Let's close out, and then we can, I'll stop sharing and we'll go into some Q&A. But lastly, I put in a couple of things: enable, meet, motivate, and lead. So really the root of that is communication. So if you're talking frequently with your team, you'll know if they're kind of off a little bit, and you might be able to help them as a manager. So I am going to exit out of sharing mode here, and let's jump into some questions. And I'm going to start with John with this first question, and we'll kind of just rotate. So it says, I'm growing my team, a SaaS implementation team. All team members will be remote. What do you screen for in a successful remote candidate? That's a really good question. So recruiting.
Sure. Well, I think a couple of things. One is culture fit. Like, are they, Gaetano mentioned he works in the middle of the night. So are you able to kind of fit in with the organization's culture and get your work done regardless of when? Another is what are you trying to achieve, and do your goals with your career map to what we're trying to get done? What I always like to look at is, what's the person's power zone, and how does that interlock with other people in the team? Because you have two people who are really good at one thing, and they both have, opportunities for growth in another area where they're maybe less either skilled or interested in that. Maybe that doesn't mesh as well with one person who's strong here, another person who's strong there, and together they really are able to get the job done better as a team. So part of it depends on what's that mix that you're trying to build. I do find that, and again, I'm biased, but I find the video is a great way to try to establish, even if you're not together on those interviews, how's this person, what's their sense of humor, what do they get passionate about, right? What's going to keep them focused when there's ups and downs at any organization, right? Hey, I'm really psyched because I'm here. I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to be able to contribute. So those are some of the things that I would look for.
Yeah, I think that was great. And we'll kind of just go a little more rapid fire on these questions so we can get through them. Thanks for that, John. Let's go Gaetano for this next one. And if you don't know, that's okay. But do you know any top 5 or really good remote work organizations that this person could learn from? From website, knowledge base, webinars, etc.
That's a good question. So a few remote cultures come to mind. Zapier, they're one that has really, I think, led the way for remote teams. There's so many out there that push remote work big. I just can't think of all of them right now, but I know Zapier is a big one that comes to mind. Nerd Wallet, I think, is another one. They're in the financial space, but I think they push remote pretty big. And I guess Cloud App.
Yeah.
I guess you guys, Nextiva, we're a hybrid. A Sales Hacker, my last company, was fully remote. They are out there. I guess just kind of the best way to find other remote people is to just go on LinkedIn and maybe just post about it and stuff, and look through the hashtag remote work. You'll probably see tons and tons of discussions around this stuff, and you'll see companies who are building remote teams all the time. In terms of resources that help you with this stuff, man, off the top of my head, I don't know, but I'm sure you're only a Google search away from finding it. So that would be my advice.
I would say remote work is definitely an exploding topic. Zapier is a great example. There's a couple of Cloud App customers, Envision and GitLab, that I believe are fully remote and awesome at it. I believe, and I think they put out quite a bit of information out about how they've kind of done it. So yeah, just look out for that, and you'll find some good information. John, what advice would you give to an org that wants to transition to more remote forward practices? Is that more organic or intention led?
I think it helps to be intention led in the sense of we're going to set up our processes, our tool sets, our policies to promote and engage remote workers and hire people in remote, locations. I can say that having worked for both big and small companies, one of the benefits of being remote, purposefully remote in your orientation is you can hire people and give them a great economic circumstance, living not in an expensive city with heavy commutes, but in a place where they want to live. Lots of great talent out there. And I always have this saying, let's ship the work to the talent, not the talent to the work.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of talented people in a lot of places, and you can economically make it great for both the employee and company by having a remote work kind of policy. But I think it's more, if you're intentional about it, you're going to be more likely to attract those people.
Yep, I agree with that. Thanks, John. Gaetano, this is actually based on something you said, but I love you said culture is to get your stuff done and won't need to micromanage your time. How do you build that trust? Do you expand your team?
Yeah, I mean, here's really what it comes down to. You got to have the culture that says we give 100% trust up front until you do something to lose that trust. And luckily, that hasn't happened here. I think some examples of ways to lose that trust would be like lying, saying, hey, I have like a doctor's appointment or something like that, and then you follow the person on Instagram and they're out partying, right? Like that would be one way you would come across such a discovery. Yep. And even that I don't like, like I would just say, if you need a day off, take a day off, let me know, whatever. So we just have like an open trust policy, and people are adults. I think through the hiring process, I think John had a lot of good tips on recruiting. You weed a lot of those people out that you feel wouldn't be able to be a part of the culture and fit the culture that you're trying to build. So the hiring process is definitely a part of that. But I think just reinforcing that all the time, this is an open trust culture. We're not here looking to witch hunt or creep on your social media to see what you're doing. Oh, he's not working or she's not working, or it's just a culture of let's be adults, let's get shit done. Let's be mature about it, and it's just better. People know that like life happens sometimes. Maybe the kid is sick, you gotta just sign off early. Just send a note, hey, out for the rest of the day. My kid's sick, gotta take him to the dentist, whatever. And then you move on about your day. So, but it does start with the manager though, for sure. Like if the manager, it does start from top down. I will say that for sure. And the cool thing about the way that I run my team is my CMO and my CEO, like they're not breathing down my neck about how I got to manage people. They, at the end of the day, if the results are there and results are coming in, it's all good. So yeah, so hiring, culture, lead by example from the management level. And then of course, if results are there, there shouldn't be any questions about it. So, yep.
Cool. Thank you. I'll kind of dig into this next one. I'm leading a small team with people in Haiti, Sri Lanka, India, Ukraine, Germany, Philippines, Bangladesh, etc. I'd like to know what you all do. So for me, I was leading a team in the U.S. and part of APAC, and then also kind of had a matrix into Europe as well. It was very much like we had to communicate asynchronously for the most part. It was too hard to do like real-time conversations. Initially it was like email, then I discovered Cloud App and used that a little bit more. But also we had to build a lot more lead time into projects because a lot of it would be day off, right? So if you're working with Australia, or a lot of people in APAC, you're sleeping when they're working. And so you'd be a day off of each other. So you have to kind of prepare, prepare in Asana with Gaetano's tools to really find that success and hit the deadlines that you need to. Honestly, there's no silver bullet. It's really hard, and you just have to kind of create a process that works for you. Let's do one more question. We got a crazy amount of questions, so maybe we'll do a follow-up to this later on in the year or something with some of these questions. But if you're hiring a remote team and you give the candidate a 20-minute phone call, what are you looking for? How can the candidate impress you without having a chance to be in person? So it goes to like hiring a remote team. Let's start with John, and then we'll kind of we might go 2-3 minutes over here, but we'll close with that question and then finish up. John?
Yeah, so I always like to understand, is someone a problem solver? So if you're a remote work person, there's going to be maybe chances that you're going to be in a situation where you can't just walk around the office next door to get the answer from someone. You got to go figure out how to get that answer or solve a problem. So I usually ask them about some of the challenges they've faced, how they've had to be resourceful to try to solve that problem. Another one I always ask for is work samples, and then I ask them, to really explain their process, because certainly sometimes people coming from big companies may have contributed to like a PowerPoint deck, but then you drill in and there were 5 of us working on it. So really trying to understand, what is that person's core skill set, what is their how do they contribute, and then also trying to understand, what are they asking good questions back to me, right? Are they thinking about, what lies ahead for this company that they'd be joining and how they can contribute, and what are some of their questions? So I think it's a two-way dialogue. Are they thinking? Are they problem solvers? Are they engaged in trying to figure out, is it a good fit for them just as a good fit for us? Because especially with remote workers, if it's not a good two-way fit, it doesn't matter, right? It's not just them about getting hired. It's about both of us finding the right fit.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you, John and Gaetano. I would encourage everyone on the webinar to connect with us on LinkedIn if your question didn't get answered. We won't always be fast, but feel free to drop a question on LinkedIn, or we're all on Twitter as well. But thank you, John and Gaetano, for your time today, and thank you to BlueJeans for hosting the meeting on their great platform. And we look forward to connecting with all of you soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.